Hi there, my name is Suze. Thank you so much for being here. I work with women to help them find balance between their internal masculine and feminine energies so that they can have lives that feel really emotionally fulfilling and satisfying. Today's video, I want to plant a seed, right? I've been talking in the past few videos that we have a new moon coming on Thursday in the sign of Virgo, and new moons are all about planting seeds for the manifestations that we want, planting seeds for the changes and the evolution that we want, right? And so on that note, I want to talk about an aspect of feminine energy that I often feel is shamed, or a lot of people have a shame connotation with this aspect that is actually very feminine and actually very healthy. And as with anything, right, it's always about balance. Anything can go too far in one direction or another. And so I think what's happened is a lot of people have taken this thing too far, and therefore the general association is that it's in the state of the distortion, and so then there's shaming around it. And what I'm talking about is the concept or the allowance of allowing yourself or someone else to change your mind. Changing your mind is actually feminine energy and actually very important and necessary on the path of expansion and growth. Expansion and growth is feminine energy anyway. The masculine energy focuses on consistency and stability. It is not focused on growth and expansion or evolution, and clearly both aspects are needed. So in the feminine, sometimes changing your mind is absolutely the thing that needs to happen, or that you need to allow yourself to do. Now, this can show up in a variety of different ways, and some are a little bit more sneaky as others. And if we don't see them because they're kind of sneaky and more subtle, you're missing out on the power of changing your mind. Obviously, if you've done any kind of work or listened to anyone in the realm of personal growth in general or spirituality, the aspect of changing your mind is kind of more obvious. Sorry, got a hair. Ooh, got a hair. All this hair, it gets in my mouth sometimes. Changing your mind as far as like changing your stories, right? Changing your belief systems, changing your limiting beliefs, changing the narrative, maybe you've heard people say. In personal growth and psychology, there's a lot of talk around that. Changing your story, change your life. And that is only one tiny little aspect of changing your mind. Way back in the beginning of my journey, that led me up to the work I do now, I was more in my masculine, and therefore I was more fascinated with psychology and neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is all about the science of studying how you can literally change the frame of your brain, and how your brain, you can create new neural pathways to create, again, the life that you want, to manifest these big things that you want. And it's very much backing up the idea of psychology and whatnot with, change your story, change your narrative, change your life. And so neuroplasticity really used to fascinate me back in the day, of like literally looking at the electrical impulses and the pathways of your brain and creating new pathways to get the life that you want. But taking this in even more of a feminine way as well, let's look at it this way. In my own work, particularly this year with my own work with myself and in observing and working with other women, I'm noticing there's been a huge emphasis this year on identity. Identity, and then kind of like a cousin of that is also self-worth. And a lot of divine feminines this year have been really anchoring into creating a new identity for themselves and a new sense of worthiness, to have bigger relationships, deeper intimacy in relationships, making more money, whatever it may be that you're really wanting to transform and change in your life, right? And so in that, changing your mind is super, super important, because when you're learning to step into a new identity, or when you've really started looking at your thought life and the belief systems or the patterns of addictive thoughts that you may have had that are actually sabotaging you, or the things that are anything you're saying to yourself that's talking down to yourself from that wounded space. That is a wounded identity. So once you're really becoming aware of your thoughts and listening to what you're saying to yourself and really being on like this hyper vigilant, high alert state for anything that you're saying that is not empowering and that is actually hurting you, quite literally, you recognize that's coming from a wounded identity. So flip it in the opposite, right? And if you're really like, I don't want to identify with that wounded feminine, that wounded masculine aspect of myself. I want to identify with the higher, awakened, divine feminine, divine masculine aspect of myself. So what is that identity? And if you're in a new identity, how you're looking at things is going to change because you're not having the same thoughts that were over here. And if you don't have the same thoughts over here, you're changing your mind about everything because how you're looking at everything is going to be different, right? There's that thing, how's that saying go? It's coming to me right now. How does the saying go? I hope I say it right. When you change the way you look at when you change the way you look at things, the things you're looking at change, right? It's something like that. I think I didn't quote it exactly right. I'm terrible at those kinds of things. Don't shoot me down, please. But you know what I'm talking about. If you actively are changing your identity into a more confident, empowered place and you're taking your power back, because that's really all wounded identities are, is places where you think you're powerless and you think you can't do anything about this current thing that you don't like. And when you realize you actually do have all the power to change, and it's only in how you respond to those outside things, you change how you respond to them, you're changing your identity from the inside out, and you're changing how you then look at them, and how you look at something is linked with your belief system. Let me break this down practically because I know this is a lot of conceptual crazy talk, and sometimes it's like, what is she talking about? I'll put it in the realm of a relationship that I have. When I really started really actively looking at sabotage in that relationship dynamic I had with someone, where there was this cycle of unhealthy things that kept on happening, and we both kept falling into a cycle of something that I didn't like, and I knew it wasn't right, and it wasn't something I wanted to keep repeating. And so I pulled back and I started listening to myself when I started slipping, and I noticed I was slipping into the beginnings of that cycle, and I started listening to what I was saying to myself. It's interesting when you start doing this, how if you're listening to what you're saying to yourself about yourself and the wounded down talk that you're speaking down to yourself, you can also link it to a belief that you have about that person. And then you can also see how that belief you have about that person and the how you're perceiving that person in a negative way might not actually be them, but it's actually someone from your past that you think is now happening here, right? Notice how you're perceiving that person. Am I saying that person is hurting me and this person is looking at me in a certain way or trying to do a certain thing to me because someone else did that to me? And it's interesting how the trickle effect starts happening. When I started stopping talking to myself from a wounded place and thinking that that person was viewing me in a bad way and feeling like I wasn't understood and I wasn't seen correctly. When I stopped thinking that and I started talking to myself more positively, I intuitively and organically started thinking positively about that person. And when I started thinking positively about myself and then positively about that person, how I was able to respond in previous situations that would have really tripped me up and really would have been a place of temptation for me to respond from a lower self. I was able to respond from a higher self because I was looking at the entire situation, both myself and the other person, from a higher perspective. And when that happened, the cycles and the patterns all of a sudden start shifting. I hope I broke that down for you enough. Does that make sense? And it's not this naive, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not this naive, clueless, turning a blind eye type of place. That's not what I am saying. What I'm saying is it started with me. Changing how I was talking to myself, then changed how I was perceiving the other person. Because when you start perceiving the other person differently, what happens is you can start perceiving where they're being triggered. And when you see someone is simply being triggered and they're not intentionally trying to hurt you, they're not intentionally trying to whatever, negative, whatever you, and you see that they're being triggered, you're in an emotionally calm and grounded space and you're able to respond to the dynamic in a higher state of being. And that influences the entire dynamic to slowly but surely start shifting. All because I changed my mind of what I was saying to myself and choosing to find a place of empowerment instead of feeling powerless, feeling misunderstood, feeling misseen, you could say, in the dynamic. Well, I see me. I'm choosing to talk to myself in the higher place. And when I do that, when I respond from a non-anxious space, when I respond from a stable, calm, grounded space, it actually opens up my eyes because I'm not in that anxiety. I'm not in that lower self. I'm in the higher self. I have higher perspective, higher vision. I'm coming from an open heart, which sees all and sees the truth, 1224, sees the truth of the situation. When I'm coming at it from that, I can see how the other person is coming from a wounded place, and my perception of everything changes, and I'm able to guide the situation in a much whole way. I hope this video helped. And changing your mind is absolutely necessary, because how you may want to respond, if you're responding from an old identity, you got to lock in that changing your mind thing. Change your mind, being aware. Nope, that's the old identity that would have responded in this way. I've changed my mind about how I'm responding. I've changed my mind about who I am and my identity. I've changed my mind about how I talk to myself. I've changed my mind about how I perceive this situation and where this person is coming from, and the intentions of this person are not actually to harm me. I have changed my mind on many different levels and aspects of the entire situation, and as a result, I've changed the pattern and the dynamic and the energies and everything moving forward. That's magic. That's divine feminine. That's alignment. That's wholeness. That's unity. That's harmony. That's power. Let me know in the comments if this video made sense to you and if you resonated with it. And if you did find value, please do subscribe and like to help boost my message and support this channel. I so appreciate you for being here. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye-bye.